Maria Santos pushed her cleaning cart down the long hallway of Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada. The wheels squeaked slightly as she moved from office to office, emptying trash bins and wiping down desks. Most people barely noticed her. To them, she was just another janitor in a blue uniform, invisible among the important work happening around her. But Maria was different. She had always been different. Growing up in a small town in Mexico, Maria had shown an unusual gift for understanding machines. While other children played with dolls or soccer balls, she took apart old radios and clocks, trying to figure out how they worked. Her father, a mechanic, encouraged her curiosity. He taught her to listen to engines, to understand their language of clicks, whirs, and hums. When Maria was 12, her family moved to the United States. The language barrier made school difficult, but math and science came naturally to her. She could look at complex diagrams and understand them instantly. Her teachers noticed her talent, but her family needed money. After high school, instead of college, Maria took a job cleaning offices to help support her younger siblings. That was 15 years ago. Now, at 33, Maria had been working at Nellis Air Force Base for 8 years. Every day, she cleaned the offices where brilliant engineers and pilots planned missions and designed new technologies. She listened to their conversations, absorbed their technical discussions, and slowly began to understand the complex world of military aviation. The A-10 Thunderbolt was Maria's favorite aircraft. She had cleaned the hangars where these powerful jets were maintained, watched mechanics work on their engines, and overheard countless briefings about their capabilities. The A-10, nicknamed the Warthog, was built around a massive cannon and designed to support ground troops. Its distinctive sound and rugged appearance fascinated her. What nobody knew was that Maria had been teaching herself advanced engineering concepts during her lunch breaks and after work. She borrowed technical manuals from the base library, studied aircraft schematics online, and even learned basic programming. Her supervisor, Jim Rodriguez, sometimes found her reading engineering journals in the break room, but he assumed she was just looking at the pictures. One evening, while cleaning the Advanced Research Wing, Maria overheard a heated discussion between Dr. Sarah Chen, the base's leading aerospace engineer, and Colonel Mike Patterson, the wing commander. They were talking about a revolutionary new project, voice-controlled aircraft systems. "The technology just isn't there yet," Dr. Chen was saying. "We've tried everything. The voice recognition software keeps failing under combat conditions. Too much background noise, too many variables. The pilots can't rely on it." Colonel Patterson shook his head. "We need this system operational, Sarah. The Pentagon is breathing down our necks. Hands-free control could save lives in combat situations." Maria paused in her cleaning, pretending to organize supplies while she listened. The conversation revealed a critical problem. Traditional voice recognition systems required perfect pronunciation and couldn't adapt to individual speech patterns under stress. The military needed something more sophisticated, more intuitive. After they left, Maria found herself staring at the complex diagrams on Dr. Chen's whiteboard. The equations and flowcharts showed the current voice control system architecture. She could see the problems immediately. The system was trying to match exact voice patterns instead of learning from the pilot's natural speech rhythms. Over the next several weeks, Maria paid special attention when she cleaned the research wing. She began to understand the full scope of the project. The military wanted pilots to control critical aircraft functions through voice commands, especially in emergency situations when their hands were busy flying the plane. But every prototype had failed field tests. The breakthrough came to Maria during a late-night cleaning shift. She was emptying wastebaskets in Dr. Chen's office when she noticed crumpled papers filled with failed algorithm designs. One diagram showed a neural network approach that was almost right, but missing a crucial component. Maria recognized the problem immediately. They were treating voice recognition as a static process instead of a dynamic learning system. That night, Maria went home to her small apartment and began working. She had built herself a basic computer from old parts over the years, and taught herself programming languages through online courses. Using her understanding of the base's research and her own insights into machine learning, she began designing a completely new approach to voice-controlled aircraft systems. Her idea was revolutionary. Instead of trying to recognize exact words, the system would learn each pilot's unique speech patterns, including how they pronounced words under stress, fear, or excitement. It would adapt in real time, becoming more accurate the longer it worked with each individual pilot. Maria worked for 3 weeks straight, every spare moment devoted to her project. She wrote code that could analyze vocal stress patterns, created algorithms that could predict commands even when words were unclear, and designed a feedback system that would improve with each use. The hardest part was testing her theories without access to the military's sophisticated equipment. Maria had to simulate aircraft conditions using her basic computer setup. She recorded herself speaking in different emotional states, with background noise, while exercising to simulate combat stress. Her neighbors probably thought she was losing her mind, talking to her computer at all hours. But the results were promising. Her system achieved accuracy rates far beyond anything the official research team had accomplished. The secret was treating voice control not as a command interface, but as a conversation between pilot and aircraft. Meanwhile, the official project was falling further behind schedule. Maria noticed the increasing frustration during her cleaning rounds. Dr. Chen looked exhausted, working 16-hour days trying to solve problems that Maria had already figured out. Colonel Patterson was under enormous pressure from Washington to show results. The tension came to a head on a Friday afternoon in November. Maria was cleaning nearby when she heard Dr. Chen on the phone with Pentagon officials. The conversation was not going well. "I understand the timeline, General, but the technology simply isn't ready," Dr. Chen said, her voice strained. "Every test flight has resulted in system failures. We need more time to fundamentally redesign the approach." The response from Washington was clearly negative, because Dr. Chen's shoulders slumped. When she hung up, she put her head in her hands. Maria finished her cleaning and left the office, but she couldn't stop thinking about what she had witnessed. These brilliant people were struggling with a problem she believed she could solve. But how could a janitor approach a top military researcher with a solution? Who would believe that someone without formal education could succeed where PhD engineers had failed? That weekend, Maria made a decision that would change everything. She would find a way to present her solution, regardless of the consequences. She spent Saturday night preparing a complete presentation of her voice control system, including code samples, theoretical framework, and projected test results. On Monday morning, Maria arrived at work with a USB drive in her pocket and a carefully written letter explaining her background and requesting just 15 minutes to present her ideas. Her hands shook as she placed the letter on Dr. Chen's desk during her morning cleaning routine. The next few hours were the longest of Maria's life. She went through her normal cleaning duties, but her mind was racing. Would Dr. Chen read the letter? Would she take it seriously? Or would she assume it was some kind of joke and report Maria to security? At 2 o'clock that afternoon, as Maria was cleaning the main corridor, she heard her name called over the intercom. "Maria Santos, please report to Dr. Chen's office immediately." Maria's heart pounded as she walked down the hallway. This was either the beginning of something amazing, or the end of her career at the base. She knocked on Dr. Chen's door, preparing for the most important conversation of her life. Dr. Chen looked up from behind her desk, Maria's letter in her hands. Behind her, Colonel Patterson sat in a chair, his expression unreadable. The USB drive sat on the desk between them. "Maria," Dr. Chen said quietly, "we need to talk." Maria stood in the doorway of Dr. Chen's office, her cleaning uniform suddenly feeling like a costume that no longer fit. The USB drive on the desk seemed to glow under the fluorescent lights, containing months of her secret work. Dr. Chen gestured to an empty chair. "Please, sit down." Maria sat carefully, her back straight, hands folded in her lap. She had imagined this moment 1,000 times, but reality felt surreal. "Your letter was quite interesting," Dr. Chen began, holding up the handwritten pages. "You claim to have solved our voice recognition problem. Maria, do you understand what we're working on here?" "Yes, ma'am," Maria replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "You're developing voice-controlled aircraft systems for combat situations." The current approach uses pattern-matching algorithms that fail under stress conditions because they can't adapt to vocal changes during high-pressure situations. Colonel Patterson leaned forward, his eyebrows raised. How could you possibly know the technical details of a classified project? Maria took a deep breath. I clean your offices every day, sir. I've been listening and learning for 8 years. I understand more than people realize. Dr. Chen picked up the USB drive. This contains your solution? A complete working prototype, ma'am. Code, documentation, test results, and implementation guidelines. The room fell silent. Colonel Patterson stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the flight line where A-10s were lined up like sleeping giants. Dr. Chen turned to her computer and inserted the USB drive. As she opened the first file, her expression changed from skepticism to surprise, then to intense concentration. The code was elegant, well-documented, and clearly the work of someone who understood both advanced programming and aerospace engineering principles. This is remarkable, Dr. Chen murmured, scrolling through Maria's algorithms. Your approach to adaptive neural networks, it's completely different from what we've been trying. Maria found her confidence growing. Traditional systems try to force pilots to speak in specific ways. My system learns how each pilot naturally speaks, even under extreme stress. It builds a personal vocal profile that becomes more accurate over time. Colonel Patterson returned to his seat. Maria, where did you learn to write code like this? Online courses, sir. Technical manuals from the base library. I taught myself programming languages during lunch breaks and after work. I've been studying aerospace engineering concepts for years. Dr. Chen continued examining the files. These test simulations show 97% accuracy rates under simulated combat stress conditions. Our best attempts have achieved only 68%. The key is treating voice control as a conversation rather than a series of commands, Maria explained. The system doesn't just recognize words, it understands context, emotional state, and individual speech patterns. It can predict what a pilot wants to say even if they don't say it perfectly. Colonel Patterson studied Maria carefully. You're telling us that while working as a janitor, you've been developing classified military technology in your spare time? Not classified technology, sir. Better technology. I used only publicly available information and my own insights. I never accessed anything I wasn't supposed to see. Dr. Chen opened another file containing Maria's theoretical framework. This is PhD-level work. Your understanding of machine learning principles is extraordinary. I've always been good with machines, ma'am. They make sense to me in a way that people sometimes don't. The three of them sat in silence for several minutes while Dr. Chen reviewed more of Maria's work. The documentation was thorough, the code was clean and efficient, and the theoretical foundation was sound. Finally, Dr. Chen looked up. Maria, what you've created here could revolutionize military aviation. Why didn't you come forward sooner? Maria smiled sadly. Who would have listened to a janitor? I needed to prove my ideas worked before anyone would take me seriously. Colonel Patterson made a decision. Dr. Chen, I want you to run a complete analysis of this system. If it's as good as it appears, we need to fast-track testing immediately. Yes, sir. Maria, I'll need you to work directly with my team. Can you explain your algorithms to other engineers? I believe so, ma'am. I've prepared detailed documentation for every component. Over the next week, Maria found herself in the strangest situation of her life. During the day, she continued her cleaning duties. But every evening after her shift, she worked with Dr. Chen's research team, explaining her revolutionary approach to voice-controlled aircraft systems. The other engineers were initially skeptical. Tom Bradley, a systems analyst with 15 years of experience, openly questioned how someone without formal training could solve problems that had stumped him for months. No offense, Maria, Tom said during their second meeting, but this stuff requires advanced degrees in multiple fields. You're talking about neural network architecture, real-time signal processing, and aerospace engineering principles. Maria calmly walked to the whiteboard and began drawing diagrams. The problem isn't the complexity, Tom. It's the approach. You're trying to make pilots adapt to machines instead of making machines adapt to pilots. As she explained her algorithms step by step, showing how the system learned and evolved with each interaction, Tom's skepticism gradually turned to amazement. By the end of the session, he was taking detailed notes and asking technical questions that proved Maria's deep understanding of the subject. Dr. Chen scheduled the first live test for the following Friday. They would use a flight simulator connected to Maria's voice control system, with an experienced A-10 pilot testing the interface under various simulated combat scenarios. The pilot chosen for the test was Captain Jennifer Walsh, a decorated combat veteran with over 200 hours in the A-10. She had been briefed on the new system but was told only that it represented a breakthrough in voice recognition technology. As the test day approached, Maria felt a mixture of excitement and terror. 8 years of invisible work was about to be put to the ultimate test. If her system failed, she would likely return to cleaning offices and never get another chance. If it succeeded, everything would change. The night before the test, Maria stayed late to make final adjustments to the system. She was alone in the lab, fine-tuning parameters and running last-minute diagnostics, when Dr. Chen appeared in the doorway. "Couldn't sleep either?" Dr. Chen asked, settling into a chair beside Maria. "Too nervous," Maria admitted. "This could change everything, or it could be the end of my dreams." Dr. Chen watched Maria work, noting the natural way she interacted with complex technical systems. "Can I ask you something? Why the A-10? Of all the aircraft to focus on, why choose the Warthog?" Maria's hands paused over the keyboard. "When I first started working here, I watched an A-10 pilot practicing emergency procedures in the simulator. She was trying to manage engine failure while calling for backup and avoiding ground fire. She kept fumbling with controls because she needed her hands to fly the plane. I realized that voice control could save lives in situations like that. That's what makes you different from the rest of my team," Dr. Chen said quietly. "They think about technical problems. You think about human problems." Friday morning arrived gray and cold. The test would take place in the Advanced Flight Simulator, a $1 million machine that could replicate any combat scenario with perfect realism. Maria's system had been integrated with the simulator's A-10 controls, allowing Captain Walsh to operate weapons systems, communications, and navigation through voice commands alone. The observation room filled with military officials, engineers, and researchers. Word had spread through the base that something significant was happening. Maria stood in the back, still wearing her cleaning uniform, watching as technicians made final preparations. Colonel Patterson addressed the room. "Today we're testing a revolutionary voice control system developed right here at Nellis. If successful, this technology could fundamentally change how our pilots interact with their aircraft." Captain Walsh climbed into the simulator cockpit and began familiarizing herself with the new system. Maria watched nervously as the pilot spoke her first commands. "System activation." The computers responded instantly, bringing aircraft systems online. Maria held her breath. Navigation display, full screen. The command executed perfectly. So far, so good. Dr. Chen began the test protocol, presenting Captain Walsh with increasingly complex scenarios. First, routine flight operations. The pilot's natural speech patterns were immediately recognized and learned by Maria's system. Commands executed smoothly, even when Captain Walsh spoke quickly or used non-standard phrasing. Then came the stress tests. Engine failures, enemy contacts, emergency landings. As the scenarios became more intense, Captain Walsh's voice changed, becoming higher, faster, sometimes unclear due to stress. Traditional voice recognition systems would have failed immediately. But Maria's system adapted in real time. It learned how Captain Walsh's pronunciation changed under stress, how her command patterns shifted during emergencies. The more challenging the scenario, the better the system performed. In the observation room, murmurs of amazement rippled through the crowd. Accuracy rates remained above 95% even during the most intense simulated combat situations. The final test was a complex combat scenario, multiple engine failures while under attack from ground forces, with wounded team members requiring immediate evacuation. Captain Walsh would need to control weapons, navigation, communications, and emergency systems simultaneously while flying a damaged aircraft. "This is where every other system has failed," Dr. Chen whispered to Maria. In the cockpit, Captain Walsh was fully immersed in the simulation. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she fought to keep the damaged A-10 in the air while coordinating rescue operations. Weapons hot, target coordinates, mark. Navigation, emergency landing field, nearest option. Communications, mayday mayday, 2 engines down, requesting immediate assistance. The commands came in a rapid stream, overlapping and urgent. Captain Walsh's voice was strained with simulated stress, her pronunciation affected by the intensity of the scenario. But Maria's system kept pace perfectly, executing every command with precision. The adaptive algorithms she had developed recognized not just words, but intent and context. When Captain Walsh said "Get me out of here" instead of the formal evacuation command, the system understood and responded appropriately. 20 minutes later, the simulation ended with a successful emergency landing and rescue of all personnel. The observation room erupted in applause. Captain Walsh climbed out of the simulator, her face flushed with excitement. "That was incredible. The system felt like it was reading my mind. I've never experienced anything like it." Colonel Patterson turned to face the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, what we've just witnessed represents a breakthrough that will revolutionize military aviation. And it was developed by someone who has been working among us for 8 years." He looked directly at Maria. "Step forward, please." Maria felt every eye in the room turn toward her. She walked slowly to the front, still hardly believing what was happening. "This remarkable achievement," Colonel Patterson continued, "was created by Maria Santos, who has been a member of our custodial staff since 2016. Today, she becomes something much more." The applause was thunderous. Dr. Chen stepped forward with a folder in her hands. "Maria, by order of the Pentagon, you are hereby appointed as Senior Systems Engineer for the Advanced Voice Control Project. Your clearance level has been upgraded, and you'll be leading the team responsible for implementing this technology across the entire Air Force fleet." Maria took the folder with trembling hands. Inside was her new identification badge, security clearance, and an official job description that still didn't seem real. But the biggest surprise was yet to come. 3 months later, Maria stood on the flight line at dawn, watching maintenance crews prepare an A-10 Thunderbolt for the most important test in her life. This wasn't a simulator. This was a real aircraft, loaded with real weapons, about to attempt the first live flight test of her voice control system. The transformation in her life had been overwhelming. Gone were the cleaning uniforms and squeaky carts. Maria now wore the blue flight suit of a test engineer, her new security badge granting access to areas she had only cleaned before. But the biggest change was the respect in people's eyes when they looked at her. Her system had passed every laboratory test with flying colors, but today's flight would prove whether it could work under real combat conditions. The A-10 had been specially modified with her voice control interface, connecting her algorithms to the aircraft's weapons systems, navigation, and communications equipment. Dr. Chen approached, carrying a tablet showing real-time system diagnostics. "All systems are green, Maria. Your code is running perfectly." "I'm still nervous," Maria admitted, watching the pilot perform his pre-flight inspection. "The simulator is one thing. This is an actual warthog carrying live ammunition." The test pilot was Colonel David Hawk Henderson, the Air Force's most experienced A-10 pilot with over 3,000 flight hours and 3 combat deployments. If anyone could push the system to its limits, it was Hawk. Colonel Henderson had been skeptical when first briefed on the project. The idea of trusting critical aircraft functions to voice commands seemed dangerous to someone who had survived combat by maintaining absolute control over his aircraft. But, after spending 2 weeks training with Maria's system and simulators, his opinion had changed dramatically. "The system doesn't just recognize what I'm saying," he had told the review board. It understands what I'm trying to accomplish. It's like having a co-pilot who can read my mind. Now, as Henderson completed his walk-around inspection, Maria felt the weight of 8 years of invisible work pressing down on her. Everything she had dreamed of, everything she had worked toward, would be decided in the next 2 hours. The test mission was designed to replicate real combat scenarios. Henderson would fly to the Nevada test range, engage multiple ground targets using voice commands alone, navigate through a simulated enemy air defense system, and return to base while managing various aircraft emergencies. His hands would remain on the flight controls throughout the mission, never touching the weapons or navigation panels. Maria, Colonel Patterson said, joining her on the observation deck, I want you to know that regardless of what happens today, you've already revolutionized how we think about human-machine interfaces. The Pentagon is calling this the most significant aviation breakthrough since fly-by-wire controls. Maria nodded, but her attention remained focused on the A-10. She could see Henderson in the cockpit, running through his pre-flight checks and speaking quietly to her system as it learned his voice patterns for the day. The unique aspect of Maria's design was its ability to adapt to daily variations in speech. Factors like fatigue, stress, illness, or even changes in breathing due to G-forces could affect voice recognition. Her system compensated for all of these variables, becoming more accurate with each flight. Tower, Warthog 17 requesting departure, Henderson's voice crackled over the radio. Warthog 17, cleared for departure. Good hunting. The massive A-10 engines spooled up with their characteristic whistle, and the aircraft began rolling down the runway. Maria watched until it disappeared into the morning sky, then moved to the mission control room where she could monitor every aspect of the flight. Multiple screens showed aircraft position, system status, voice command logs, and live video from Henderson's helmet camera. Maria's heart rate increased as she realized she was about to see her creation tested under the most demanding conditions possible. 20 minutes later, Henderson reached the test range. His first target was a simulated enemy tank positioned 3 miles away. In traditional combat, he would need to use his hands to operate targeting systems, select weapons, and fire controls while simultaneously flying the aircraft. With Maria's system, everything would be controlled by voice. Target acquisition, ground vehicle, 2 o'clock, Henderson's voice came through clearly. On the screens in mission control, they watched as the aircraft's targeting system immediately locked onto the tank. Maria's algorithms had not only recognized the command but understood the directional reference and initiated the search pattern. Weapons hot, GAU-8, target confirmed, Henderson continued. The A-10's massive 30mm cannon armed automatically. Maria felt her breath catch as she watched her system prepare to control the most powerful weapon system on the aircraft. Engage, engage, engage. The A-10's distinctive BRRRT sound echoed across the desert as Henderson fired the cannon using only voice commands. The target exploded in a cloud of smoke and debris. Mission control erupted in cheers, but Maria remained focused on the system diagnostics. Everything was performing exactly as designed. Outstanding, Henderson's voice came over the radio. System response was instantaneous. No delay, no hesitation. Moving to Target 2. The second phase of the test involved multiple targets while maneuvering through simulated anti-aircraft fire. Henderson would need to rapidly switch between different weapon systems while executing evasive maneuvers. This scenario had caused every previous voice control system to fail. Multiple targets, armored vehicles, 11 o'clock to 2 o'clock, Henderson reported as he banked the A-10 into a sharp turn. Weapons select, Maverick missiles, target priority left to right. Maria watched in amazement as her system seamlessly handled the complex targeting sequence. The aircraft's computers locked onto 3 vehicles simultaneously, prioritized them according to Henderson's spoken instructions, and prepared the appropriate missiles. But then came the real test. Simulated surface-to-air missiles began firing at Henderson, requiring immediate evasive action. As the A-10 pitched and rolled violently, Henderson's voice became strained with G-forces. Countermeasures, deploy, chaff and flare. His words came in gasps as the aircraft pulled 4Gs. Traditional voice recognition would have failed completely under these conditions. But Maria's system had been designed for exactly this scenario. It recognized Henderson's vocal patterns even under extreme physical stress, deploying defensive systems that could save his life in real combat. Missiles evaded, continuing attack run, Henderson reported as he leveled out. Target 1, engage. Target 2, engage. Target 3, engage. 3 Maverick missiles fired in rapid succession, each finding its mark perfectly. Maria's system had managed a complex weapons engagement while the pilot focused entirely on flying and surviving. In mission control, the atmosphere was electric. General Patricia Morrison, who had flown in from Washington specifically for this test, leaned over to Colonel Patterson. "This changes everything, Mike. We need this system on every combat aircraft in the inventory." But the most challenging part of the test was still ahead. Henderson was about to attempt something that had never been done before, conducting air-to-ground combat while simultaneously managing multiple aircraft emergencies, all through voice control. The scenario was terrifying in its realism. Simulated engine failure, hydraulic system damage, and communications equipment problems, all while under attack from ground forces. It represented the kind of desperate situation where voice control could mean the difference between life and death. "Emergency, emergency, engine 2 failure, hydraulic pressure dropping," Henderson announced as the test scenario began. Maria watched her system instantly shift into emergency mode, prioritizing critical aircraft functions while maintaining weapons capability. This adaptive response was something she had programmed based on countless conversations she had overheard during her years cleaning pilot briefing rooms. "Emergency power, backup systems online," Henderson continued, his voice tight with simulated stress. "Navigation, emergency landing field, nearest compatible runway. Communications, mayday call, request immediate assistance." The commands came rapidly, overlapping and urgent. Henderson was essentially having 3 conversations simultaneously with air traffic control, his aircraft systems, and ground support while flying a damaged plane and fighting for his life. Maria's system handled it flawlessly. It understood context and priority, routing communications appropriately while managing aircraft systems and maintaining weapons readiness. The artificial intelligence she had developed was demonstrating something approaching intuition. "Incredible," Dr. Chen whispered beside Maria. "The system is actually predicting his next commands. Look at the response times." She was right. Maria's algorithms were becoming so attuned to Henderson's speech patterns and tactical thinking that they were preparing responses before he finished speaking. The human-machine interface was evolving into true partnership. The climax came when Henderson spotted the rescue helicopter that was supposed to evacuate wounded ground troops from the simulated battle zone. He needed to provide close air support while coordinating with multiple agencies and managing his damaged aircraft. "Ground control, Warthog 17 providing cover for evacuation," Henderson transmitted. "Weapons select, cannon, danger close engagement parameters. Target acquisition, enemy positions, suppress fire on rescue zone." Maria held her breath as Henderson began the most dangerous maneuver in close air support, firing within meters of friendly forces. One mistake, one misunderstood command, could mean disaster even in simulation. But her system performed perfectly. It understood not just Henderson's words, but his intent. When he said, "keep their heads down," instead of using formal military terminology, the system translated his meaning into appropriate tactical action. The A-10's cannon fired in precise bursts, suppressing enemy positions while the rescue helicopter completed its mission. Henderson had successfully conducted close air support, managed multiple aircraft emergencies, and coordinated complex rescue operations using only voice commands. "Mission complete, returning to base," Henderson announced as he turned toward home. The flight back to Nellis was almost anticlimactic after the intensity of the combat scenarios. Maria's system had passed every test, exceeded every expectation, and proven itself under the most demanding conditions imaginable. As Henderson's A-10 appeared on the horizon, Maria felt tears of relief and joy running down her cheeks. The invisible janitor who had dreamed of contributing something meaningful to the world had just changed military aviation forever. But when Henderson landed and climbed out of the cockpit, his first words surprised everyone. "Where's Maria Santos? I need to talk to the genius who created this system." Henderson strode across the tarmac, still wearing his flight gear, and stopped directly in front of Maria. The entire crowd of officials and engineers watched in silence. "Ma'am," he said formally, "what you've created isn't just technology. It's a lifesaver. In real combat, this system would mean the difference between coming home and not coming home. Every pilot in the Air Force owes you a debt of gratitude." He extended his hand, and Maria shook it, feeling the calloused grip of a combat veteran who understood exactly what her work meant. General Morrison stepped forward. "Colonel Henderson, your assessment?" Henderson's response would determine the future of Maria's creation. "General, this is the most significant advance in combat aviation since the jet engine. We need to fast-track production immediately. Every day we delay puts our pilots at unnecessary risk." The crowd erupted in celebration, but Maria found herself thinking about the journey that had brought her to this moment. From a curious child taking apart radios in Mexico to a janitor listening to engineering discussions, to the creator of technology that would protect pilots around the world. But the story was far from over. Maria's success had attracted attention from unexpected places, and her next challenge would test not just her technical skills, but her character and values in ways she never imagined. 1 year after the successful A-10 test flight, Maria Santos stood in a conference room at the Pentagon, facing a panel of defense officials from 12 different countries. Her voice control system had exceeded all expectations, but success had brought challenges she never anticipated. The technology that began in her small apartment had revolutionized military aviation. A-10 pilots reported 98% mission success rates when using Maria's system, compared to 73% with traditional controls. Combat effectiveness had improved dramatically, and pilot fatigue during long missions had decreased significantly. But Maria's creation had also attracted the attention of foreign governments, private defense contractors, and intelligence agencies around the world. Everyone wanted access to technology that could provide such a decisive military advantage. "Ms. Santos," said General Patricia Morrison, who had become Maria's strongest supporter within the Pentagon, "we have a situation that requires your input." The briefing that followed revealed the complexity of Maria's success. 3 allied nations wanted to license her technology for their own air forces. 2 major defense contractors had offered her $50 million to leave the Air Force and work for them exclusively. Most troubling, intelligence reports suggested that foreign agents were actively trying to steal or reverse engineer her systems. "Your technology has become a matter of national security," explained Colonel Patterson, now director of the Advanced Aviation Systems program. "We need to discuss how to protect it while maximizing its benefits for our allies and our own forces." Maria listened carefully, feeling overwhelmed by the implications. When she had started working on voice control algorithms, she had simply wanted to help pilots fly more safely. Now her creation had geopolitical consequences that stretched far beyond anything she had imagined. The first speaker was Dr. James Mitchell from the Defense Intelligence Agency. "Maria, we've intercepted communications indicating that at least 4 foreign intelligence services are targeting you personally. They want to recruit you, steal your research, or in some cases, prevent you from continuing your work." This revelation sent a chill through Maria. She had always focused on the technical aspects of her work, never considering that her success might put her in danger. "What does that mean for my family?" she asked, thinking of her parents and siblings who still lived in Nevada. "We've already arranged security measures," General Morrison assured her. "But we need to discuss your long-term future. The technology you've created is too valuable to leave unprotected." The next presentation came from Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Kim, who had been tracking the global impact of Maria's voice control system. The results were remarkable and slightly frightening. "Allied nations using your technology are reporting combat effectiveness improvements of 30 to 40%, Kim explained, showing charts and statistics. "Enemy forces have already begun developing countermeasures, trying to jam or disrupt voice control frequencies. This has sparked an entirely new dimension of electronic warfare." Maria had never thought her work would lead to an arms race, but the evidence was undeniable. Countries around the world were scrambling to either acquire her technology or develop defenses against it. The most unexpected development came from civilian applications. Commercial airlines had approached the Pentagon about licensing simplified versions of Maria's system for passenger aircraft. Medical device companies wanted to adapt her algorithms for surgical robots controlled by voice commands. Even automobile manufacturers were interested in applying her technology to self-driving cars. Your breakthrough extends far beyond military applications, explained Dr. Rebecca Foster from the Pentagon's Technology Transfer Office. We estimate that civilian applications could generate billions in economic benefits. But we need to carefully control how the technology spreads. The meeting continued for 6 hours, covering everything from patent law to international security agreements. Maria found herself at the center of decisions that would affect global military balance, economic development, and technological progress for decades to come. But the most difficult conversation was yet to come. That evening, Maria sat in a secure conference room with Dr. Chen, who had become both her mentor and closest friend during the past year. They were discussing an offer that could change everything. The Brookings Institute wants you to lead a new research division, Dr. Chen explained. Unlimited funding, your own team, complete freedom to pursue any projects you find interesting. It's an incredible opportunity. Maria studied the formal offer letter. The salary alone was more money than her family had ever dreamed of. The research opportunities were limitless. She could work on any technology she wanted, with the best minds in the world. What's the catch? Maria asked, knowing there had to be one. You would have to leave the Air Force. And you couldn't work directly on military applications anymore. The position comes with restrictions on defense-related research. This was the choice Maria had been dreading. Success had given her options, but every option required sacrificing something important to her. Over the next week, Maria visited the places that had shaped her journey. She returned to the base where she had worked as a janitor, walking through the hallways she had cleaned for 8 years. Many of the offices now contain teams of engineers implementing her voice-controlled technology across different aircraft platforms. She stopped by the maintenance hangar where she had first fallen in love with the A-10 Thunderbolt. Chief Master Sergeant Rodriguez, who had supervised her custodial work, found her there staring at the aircraft that had inspired her breakthrough. I heard about your big decision, Rodriguez said, joining her beside the massive Warthog. Whatever you choose, you've already changed the world. I feel like I'm being forced to choose between my dreams and my values, Maria replied. Money and prestige, or continuing to help the people who protect our country. Rodriguez smiled. Maria, you've been helping people your whole life. As a janitor, you kept this place running so others could focus on their missions. As an engineer, you've given pilots tools that will save their lives. Whatever you do next, you'll find a way to help people. That's who you are. His words stayed with Maria as she made her final decision. The announcement came at a press conference that drew international media attention. Maria stood at a podium in the Pentagon briefing room, wearing her Air Force uniform, facing cameras from around the world. After careful consideration, she began, I have decided to remain with the United States Air Force and continue developing voice control technology for military applications. The room buzzed with surprise. Most observers had expected her to accept one of the lucrative private offers. However, Maria continued, I am also announcing the creation of the Santos Foundation for Aviation Safety, which will work to adapt my technology for civilian humanitarian purposes. This was Maria's solution to the impossible choice. She would continue her military work, but also establish a foundation that could pursue civilian applications of her technology. Medical helicopters, search and rescue aircraft, and disaster relief operations would benefit from voice-controlled systems designed to save lives rather than take them. The foundation would be funded through licensing agreements with civilian companies, ensuring that Maria could pursue both her military mission and her humanitarian goals simultaneously. General Morrison joined Maria at the podium. The Air Force is proud to support this initiative. Sergeant Santos represents the best of American innovation and service. Maria's promotion to sergeant had come with her decision to remain in the military. She had also been accepted into an accelerated degree program that would grant her formal engineering credentials while she continued her research work. But, the most meaningful moment of the press conference came during the question period. A reporter from Aviation Week asked Sergeant Santos, "What advice would you give to other people who feel invisible or overlooked in their current positions?" Maria thought for a moment before answering. "Your current position doesn't define your potential. I learned more about aerospace engineering while cleaning offices than many people learn in school. Every job, every experience, every conversation is an opportunity to grow and contribute. Don't wait for permission to pursue your dreams." After the press conference, Maria returned to her laboratory at Nellis Air Force Base. The facility had expanded dramatically since her breakthrough, now occupying an entire building with dozens of engineers working on various applications of her voice control technology. But, Maria's new project was her most ambitious yet. She was developing a voice control system specifically designed for combat search and rescue operations. The technology would allow rescue helicopter crews to coordinate complex missions while focusing entirely on flying in dangerous conditions. The inspiration had come from a conversation with Captain Jennifer Walsh, the test pilot who had first validated Maria's system. Walsh had described a rescue mission in Afghanistan where voice control could have saved precious seconds that meant the difference between life and death for wounded soldiers. "This is what I want to work on next," Maria had told Dr. Chen. Technology that brings people home safely. The search and rescue system required entirely new approaches to voice recognition. Rescue crews often worked in extreme weather conditions, with multiple people speaking simultaneously in high-stress situations. Maria's algorithms needed to distinguish between different voices, understand commands given in multiple languages, and maintain accuracy even when crews were shouting over rotor noise and wind. 6 months into the project, Maria achieved another breakthrough. Her new system could understand not just individual commands, but team coordination patterns. It could predict what different crew members needed based on mission phase and automatically configure aircraft systems to support their work. The first test came during a simulated rescue mission in Alaska. A Coast Guard helicopter crew used Maria's system to coordinate the rescue of survivors from a crashed aircraft in severe weather conditions. The mission succeeded in conditions where traditional communication methods would have failed. But, Maria's greatest personal satisfaction came from an unexpected source. Her success had inspired her younger sister, Carmen, to pursue engineering studies at MIT. Carmen was now working on her own research project, voice-controlled prosthetic limbs for wounded veterans. The Santos family had traveled far from their small town in Mexico, but the values that drove them remained unchanged: work hard, help others, and never stop learning. On a quiet evening 2 years after her first A-10 test flight, Maria stood again on the flight line at Nellis Air Force Base. But now she wasn't alone. A team of young engineers worked beside her, many of them former custodial staff, security guards, and maintenance workers who had been inspired by her example to pursue technical careers. The Air Force had established the Santos program, providing education and training opportunities for service members in non-technical roles who showed aptitude for engineering and innovation. Maria served as mentor and inspiration for hundreds of military personnel who had previously felt limited by their job descriptions. An A-10 Thunderbolt taxied past, returning from a training mission. Maria could see the pilot speaking to her voice control system, the technology that had started with her late-night tinkering in a small apartment now protecting aircrew around the world. Her radio crackled with a transmission from the pilot. "Ground control, Warthog 2-4 requesting permission to taxi. And, please pass along thanks to Sergeant Santos for technology that keeps us safe up there." Maria smiled, remembering the invisible janitor who had once only dreamed of contributing to something meaningful. That young woman could never have imagined standing here today, wearing the uniform of the United States Air Force, leading teams that were pushing the boundaries of what technology could accomplish. But, perhaps the most important thing hadn't changed at all. Maria was still helping people, still learning from every experience, still believing that dedication and curiosity could overcome any obstacle. As she watched the A-10 disappear into the hangar, Maria thought about her next project, voice-controlled systems for space exploration. NASA had approached her about adapting her technology for spacecraft operations, where astronauts needed to manage complex systems while conducting critical research. The invisible janitor who had taught herself engineering was about to reach for the stars. Her journey from cleaning offices to controlling aircraft had taught her that potential exists in every person and every situation. The key was recognizing it, developing it, and never accepting that dreams are too big or goals too distant. Maria Santos had proven that brilliance can emerge from anywhere, that dedication can overcome any barrier, and that the most important breakthroughs often come from the most unexpected places. Her voice would continue to guide aircraft, spacecraft, and rescue missions around the world, but her greatest achievement was showing others that they too could find their voice and change the world.